Welcome to the Cloud Pod, where the forecast is always cloudy. We talk weekly about all things AWS, Google, and Azure. We are your hosts,
Justin,
Jonathan,
and Peter. Episode 32, recorded on July 23rd. The Cloud Pod placed outside the Magic Quadrant. Hey guys, how's it going tonight?
Good.
Going well.
Good. Nice to get through that last show. It was a little bit long, but this one's a little bit more manageable for tonight, so hopefully we can get through this week's bunch of news very quickly. Amazon has introduced a new Corretto crypto provider for improved crypto performance. Of course, this is the ACCP, or the Amazon Corretto Crypto Provider. This is a cryptography solution based on Java that is less CPU intensive, resulting in much faster processing of encryption, as well as reduced costs for you. This is an open source capability and is available to you on Maven and GitHub, so you can also make it available to your non-Corretto based Java implementations of Java 8 and Java 11. So super nice to see some crypto improvements.
Yeah, I think their example in that article was pretty cool, how they're using it on Snowball, and they've basically doubled the throughput of the device, which means encryption is half the effort, which is pretty cool.
Colm's been posting some stuff about this recently on Twitter, and in fact he has a coding competition going right now, which we can paste a link to in the show notes.
What's the coding competition?
So it's taking a random number generator algorithm, which is very complicated and difficult to understand, and turning it into some readable, easy to follow code for non-mathematicians and potentially people who aren't experts at cryptography.
Well, that sounds absolutely riveting. I would get right on that. My mathematics, degree is a little bit unused these days, and so I get right into that encryption math.
Yes, that's the 0th degree.
All right, well, that's awesome though. If you're really into encryption, though, it's a fun activity to be part of, and something that might get you noticed by AWS. So pretty cool. Microsoft Azure, as you guys may know, has gotten a little bit of a bad rap for being the one cloud provider with some of the worst uptime. So they, have been writing some blog posts, and their CTO recently wrote a blog post on advancing the Microsoft Azure reliability. Over the last 12 months, they point out that Azure has operated core compute services at a 99.995% uptime across their global compute infrastructure, which is where you immediately realize that they're just giving you a metric because they said global versus just individual region. And of course they say as reliance on cloud services continue to grow for industries, organizations, and people around the world, now it's more important than ever to trust the cloud will be available to you, reliable, secure, etc. So the CTO continues to go on to talk about some of the things that they're doing to improve reliability, and he breaks them down into safe deployment practices through a safe deployment practice framework they built to ensure that all code and configuration changes to the Azure cloud go through a specific cycle. So I guess this is an SDLC. Apparently they didn't have that at Microsoft before. They announced a new storage account level failover capability after their September 2018 DC outage, making it available so that you can actually decide when you want to fail over to their less, and potentially lose data versus leaving that in Azure's hands. Of course, they're expanding availability zones to provide more local redundancy. Project Tardigrade, which we talked about before, which was to be preemptively moving workloads before a host dies. And then, of course, low to zero impact maintenance including hot patching, live migration, and in-place migrations. And then, of course, fault injection and stress testing, which is really just chaos engineering, but in much more words. So overall, I really like these type of blog posts from Azure and Google, where they kind of really talk about something very specific that they're working on or a challenge. And, we kind of get this from Amazon as well, but more in Twitter threads or through keynote conversations. They don't really do blog posts like this all the time. And so definitely nice to see this from Azure. And if you're using that platform, availability should get better.
Yeah, I like the live migration feature. I think that's sadly missing from AWS. And I guess you use it in cases where your workloads are not stateless as you would like. But I'm kind of wondering now, last time Google posted anything about their reliability, they suffered those terrible outages. Yeah. So let's start the clock and see how long Azure go before they have another outage.
Well, I mean, if it's Office 365, apparently they're quite often, so that's my understanding. But I don't do a lot with that, so I don't run into it. Azure has also announced new proximity placement groups. These are the ability to basically provision infrastructure near other virtual machines. So if you have a set of web tier or an app tier that you need to have kind of on the same virtual machine or very close to each other, you can now use proximity groups to place them in basically the same infrastructure. And this will lower your latency and provide more deterministic latency between nodes. There's a quote here from Ventislav Ivanov from Development Architecture SAP. It is really great to see this feature now publicly available. We are going to make use of it as our standard deployments. My team is automating large-scale deployments of SAP landscapes. To ensure best performance of the system, it is essential to ensure low latency between the different components of the system. Especially critical is the communication between application server and the database, as well as the latency between HANA VMs when synchronous replication has to be enabled. Wow, so really, definitely some use cases and customers that need stuff. So very nice.
I hate to see people shaving off milliseconds from network latency and thinking that that's going to solve all their application crappiness. But I mean, yeah, it's pretty good.
The problem with doing this with placement groups, even on AWS, is there has to be hardware available next to your existing hardware, or you have to spin up everything from scratch.
Yeah, there's definitely some challenges with it, but I think there are use cases, especially HPC type workloads, where this is super important. If you're using a real-time caching layer between nodes, having low latency to that can be beneficial as well. I mean, you should definitely be planning for latency spikes in the cloud. Assume that's going to fail, but it's nice to have some options and some things you can kind of work around from an overall perspective in designing your app to hopefully be more fault tolerant and more resilient. IBM has inked a multi-billion-dollar cloud computing deal with AT&T. IBM has landed a multi-year cloud deal, which is worth tens of billions of dollars over the lifetime. This is a migration to include an extensive software modernization effort. The carrier will leverage IBM's expertise to refactor legacy workloads that can't easily be migrated to the cloud. This is the first deal signed after the $34 billion acquisition of Red Hat. And Dave Valenti, chief analyst at SiliconANGLE's sister research firm Wikibon, said, "Clearly, Red Hat gives IBM a better position to run hybrid and multi-cloud networks. Hybrid multi-cloud is complex. IBM loves complexity, and its service organization is number one in the industry." So interesting. Followed up by the following article, which is Microsoft and AT&T signed a $2 billion cloud infrastructure and services deal, which is hilarious because this announcement came out the day after the one I just mentioned to you all. And this is apparently, the first one is all around IBM's current business solutions, their carrier operations, and the IBM deal with Microsoft covers their AT&T Business Solutions Group, which includes servicing corporate clients. So overall, AT&T is getting big in the cloud with multiple providers, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, I blew it. I should have had our sales guy call them. They're handing it out $1 billion at a time.
Yeah, you guys should get in there still. Maybe they need some help. So apparently this is also including a migration of 250,000 users to Office 365. Which is Chief Executive Satya Nadella said, "Together we will apply the power of Azure and Microsoft Office 365 to transform the way AT&T's workforce collaborates and to shape the future of media and communications for people everywhere," which is saying a lot for AT&T. That's I don't know if that's what they're doing, but it sounds great.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the Microsoft one, they basically, I think they say that Azure is going to be the platform of choice for infrastructure as a service, which makes me think that IBM's contract is heavily traditional services like ProServe weighted.
Maybe. They just mentioned the Red Hat thing just to keep reminding us that Red Hat was just bought by IBM recently, or I mean, surely IBM could have used Red Hat all along anyway if they'd wanted to, but they didn't.
Well, I think they were talking about, in the article they talk very heavily about, AT&T's desire to re-platform onto things like OpenShift and open source software, which Red Hat kind of gives them, combined with IBM's professional services arm, which is one of the stronger professional services organizations out there from a complex project perspective. I think it makes sense that not only can now IBM do that, but they can also give you a good deal on your OpenShift licenses to move your containers. I think it makes sense. There's some synergy there. I mean, other than that, it's just, hey, remember they bought IBM and Red Hat bought them? And so there you go. But I see some of the connection, but it was a little bit of a stretch in the article.
Yeah. Well, that's a lot of Office 365 use. I'm sure that's going to have an effect on the Q3 revenue.
I'm sure the Q3 revenue will be moving on up for Azure, as it does every quarter. But hopefully that'll help them in some of the other things. Well, Amazon was in the news with the government, and not for Jedi this time around. Apparently, the tech giant is facing antitrust scrutiny on 2 different continents. Both the EU and the U.S. House Judiciary Committee have started antitrust hearings and investigations into not only Amazon, but also Apple, Facebook, and Google. The reason why now in this point in time is, Amazon has become emblematic of the income inequality in the U.S. with its stratified workforce. immense appetite for growth and the richest person in the world, of course, at the helm. And then corporate consolidation across industries has made these companies much bigger targets. And the easiest example of flashy headlines that can capture the media attention. Amazon in particular is under fire in the EU and in the US for their Amazon Marketplace practices. And this has been a complaint for a long time where apparently Amazon uses their large machine learning system to basically determine third-party sellers' products that are selling well and then creates competitive products under the Amazon Basics brand to sell on the store. Amazon argues that in total retail, they represent 1% of the global retail and less than 4% in the US. But if you look at only online, Amazon is 37.7% of the US online sales.
Wow.
And Amazon's strategy so far has been to emphasize the competitors it faces in each sector where it operates. And so they call out Walmart.com and Costco, etc., as big competitors of theirs. So we'll see over the next years, because these things take a long time to work through the process, what kind of fire gets put under Amazon and if that forces a breakup or any other type of concessions on Amazon.com and, of course, the other players as well. As you guys probably remember, Microsoft, of course, went through this back in the 90s and really stifled their innovation for a long time. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, unbundling IE from the rest of Windows was fairly disastrous for them.
And I still had a difficult time understanding how that was the big problem with Microsoft.
Clearly, your parents are not as tech unsavvy as some of our others, who just use the basic thing that's on the computer and don't think about Firefox or any of the other solutions that existed right back at that time, Mozilla. So,
Yeah.
I definitely if you look at Microsoft's history and having formerly lived in Seattle. In their backyard, you can kind of see some of the very hostile things they did in many different areas, not just IE domination, but employment domination across the market, and overall, I think they needed that shot across the bow to kind of pull them back in line, but they also lost a ton of market share. They're not the biggest in search because they were focusing on this versus competing with Google at the time, and then they tried to do it with Bing. It didn't work out so well. So
right.
It can be a big distraction. I don't know if it's a big distraction for AWS. I think it might be a big distraction for Amazon and Facebook, and we'll see what happens long term. But definitely something we'll stay on top of here at the CloudPod.
Well, hopefully it does not stifle innovation of AWS, because that's so much fun to watch.
I mean, I wouldn't mind if it forced a breakup of the company where, Marketplace and AWS and the store had to kind of be separate entities.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that would be a terrible thing. It would definitely remove the one big complaint companies like Walmart have about using Amazon.com. But, we'll see.
Yeah, for sure.
Hey everyone, Jonathan here. I just wanted to take a minute to thank the cloud consulting gurus at Foghorn for helping make the CloudPod possible. These folks truly get it. Cloud consulting experts since 2008, they are premier tier partners with AWS, Google Cloud Platform Silver, and Microsoft Azure partners. From multi-cloud to containers to moving full production workloads to the cloud under the tightest compliance, Foghorn's team of full-stack cloud engineers have been there, done that, gotten the t-shirt, and are ready to share their experience with you. If you're in the market for some talent to supplement your team, visit www.fogops.io/thecloudpod. www.fogops.io/thecloudpod. Foghorn, the promise of cloud delivered.
As you guys may know, Amazon has been in the news a lot about their facial recognition technology, in particular around police departments using that technology to surveil the population at large. But apparently after 15 months of wrangling, the Orlando Police Department has abandoned their project because they could not begin testing AI cloud tech using Amazon's recognition API. There were several issues, including poor camera placement, video feed disconnects, and an incompatibility with the format from their cameras and what recognition can take on board. This follows, of course, complaints from the ACLU that the recognition technology struggles more when asked to identify women and people of color. And Orlando's chief administrative office told the city council in a memo, "At this time, the city was not able to dedicate the resources to the pilot to enable us to make any noticeable progress towards completing the needed configuration and testing. The city has no immediate plans regarding future pilots to explore this type of facial recognition technology." So that's very interesting.
Some other providers are going to swoop in now and sell them some even more expensive technology that does exactly the same thing.
That uses recognition in the backend. They just don't know it.
Most likely. I mean, I remember when recognition was first announced. We got into the preview program. Within like 30 minutes, we were using recognition to recognize all kind of objects in the office. The level of entry was not high, so the fact that they were hindered by these relatively pointless things is I'm not even sure if I'm going to call bullshit or whether they're just kind of stupid.
I don't know that your municipal government is going to have the most high technology developers and or IT people to help these kind of projects. And so anytime you're dealing with this, if it's more complicated than things are used to, it's not Microsoft technology that they can point and click, they're going to run into some troubles. And I think this is a perfect example of it. I'm a little surprised because, it did talk about Amazon was involved, trying really hard to get this working for them. They had professional services there working on it. But, they mentioned that Amazon offered to provide cameras that would actually work with recognition, and Orlando chose not to do that. So it definitely feels like this is more of a case of municipal government maybe using this as an excuse not to continue on this project based on pressure from the ACLU and their citizens who were concerned about it.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like it.
I could also imagine a company who does, take this type of technology and build a good vertical solution specifically for police, fully packaged, will probably sell pretty well.
Let's get on that.
Nope. I have enough jobs. Man.
I don't think I want to get involved in that. That sounds like a politically ripe area that I want to avoid. So. But, despite Orlando PD's inability to use recognition, Amazon has been named the leader in Gartner's Infrastructure as a Service Magic Quadrant for the 9th consecutive year. Amazon continues to dominate the Magic Quadrant, but Microsoft, while not as high on the ability to execute Quadrant, has closed in a big way. So if you look at them, compare them year over year, Azure has continued to kind of move up and closer to AWS every year. There are other players on the boxes, of course. Alibaba, Oracle, IBM, Google are all in the Magic Quadrant. Google also joined Azure this year in the Leaders Quadrant, but barely in the Leaders Quadrant. But there were some interesting different pieces of news around this. But overall, the Magic Quadrant, of course, is a big source of truth for the top Fortune 500. And what do you guys think?
I'm just waiting for Oracle to sue them, claiming that the whole Magic Quadrant thing is unfair and biased against them.
It is. They're doing things like rating your features, your functionality, ability to deliver. That's not fair.
There's definitely some, and you can go get this Magic Quadrant following the link in our show notes. You can fill out the form from Amazon and get access to the entire report, which includes all of their opinions about their competitors and, of course, Amazon's strengths and weaknesses as well. But on the Oracle one, the one that I thought was a little bit mean was Oracle is unlikely to ever be viewed by the market as a general-purpose provider of integrated infrastructure as a service and platform as a service offerings. This is due to the dominance of the hyperscale providers, Oracle's late start with OCI, and the polarizing nature of Oracle in the minds of developers who often are the leading influencers for public cloud infrastructure as a service.
Brutal.
I was like, ouch. Way to call Oracle out on their terrible, terrible business practices. They did also ding Azure here in their cautions. Microsoft Azure's reliability issues continue to be a challenge for the customers largely as a result of Azure's growing pains. Since September 2018, Azure has had multiple service impacting incidents, including significant outages involved in Azure Active Directory. The nature of many of these outages is such that customers had no controls in order to mitigate the downtime. So that's a pretty bad statement from Gartner as well, and something you don't want to have in your list, which is probably why there's a blog post from their CTO talking about what they're doing to improve their uptime and overall availability. Then, of course, the Google caution that I enjoyed was Google demonstrates an immaturity of process and procedures when dealing with enterprise accounts, which can make the company difficult to transact with at times. This can be attributed to its nascent focus on the enterprise market. The immaturity of process is most pronounced in areas such as contract negotiation, discounting, independent software vendor licensing, integration with enterprise systems, and support. Google is aggressively targeting these shortcomings. Any other items you guys saw from the quadrant you want to talk about?
It always bothers me that there's no scale on those quadrants. I mean, how are they scoring the things? Like, if as you're moving up very slightly year over year, like, what's the reason for that? I mean, I like metrics that actually have units.
Well, I mean, you can probably get those if you pay them a lot of money for their analysis to get on the phone with you and tell you how close they are to each other. Which is how these things work. This is a marketing campaign by Gartner to basically get you to pay for their expertise and what they do. Which is very much a pay-for-play type story. I do remember, I think it was 4 or 5 years ago, actually, in the Magic Quadrant, they talked about Amazon was so far ahead up to the right that if they had put Amazon where it should be, it would be off the chart.
Yeah.
And that, no other cloud provider was even close. So, the fact that both Azure and Google have been able to move into the leadership quadrant, have been able to really catch up on AWS, says a lot about the maturity of the cloud market in general. And just overall, it's a growing market that's continuing to mature, and Amazon isn't the top dog all the time anymore.
Yeah. And it's just great, though. You need somebody pushing them, because if nobody's pushing them, we wouldn't get to see all the continued advancement that we're seeing.
There was a good dig here on pricing from AWS, for Gartner, for their cautions for AWS. AWS makes frequent proclamations about the number of price reductions it has made. Customers interpret these proclamations as being applicable to the company's services broadly, but this is not the case. For instance, the default and most frequently provisioned storage for AWS's compute service has not experienced a price reduction since 2014, despite falling prices in the market for the raw components. So, I mean, they chose EBS. I would have chose network bandwidth, but, hey, whatever. They can pick what they want to.
Yeah, I mean, the cost of power certainly isn't going down.
Right.
No, it's definitely not going down. It only goes up, especially if you're in the Bay Area with all the wildfires and Puget Sound or PGE energy. So.
Yeah, reading that one, I almost felt like someone's like, we got to put something. And then,
what else can we get to make? What else do we poke at?
Yeah.
The other two they had for them were, Amazon prioritizes being first to market with respect to delivering new services and capabilities. As a result, is willing to launch future-poor services or services without deep cross-platform integration, which is often defers to the future to address. Which, I mean, that's what MVP is. I can't really knock them that hard. They're building a product that meets a wide spectrum of customer needs, and then they tweak it from there to meet the more stringent needs.
Like adding tagging.
Yeah, exactly. And then, of course, they also ding them on the fact that there's ambitions of the Amazon CEO expanding into additional markets. The board of directors for companies that potentially threaten verticals have directed their IT organizations to avoid the use of AWS where possible, which could be fixed if they split AWS into its own business, which is my comment from earlier.
Yeah.
The Magic Quadrant, I don't think it's the end-all be-all solution to how you should choose your technology, but I always do find them interesting to compare and kind of see what they think are cautions, because if you ever talk to a Gartner analyst, you realize that they're very not technical. And so it's always quite interesting to see what they have to say and how they take all this technical information and jargon and things they don't understand and how they boil it down into this Magic Quadrant. So definitely check it out if you're doing stuff in the cloud. It's just an interesting read in general, and we can't cover everything that's here because it's a lot of content. Google has introduced Spinnaker for Google Cloud Platform, making CD easy. Oftentimes, developers end up spending more time writing end-to-end CI/CD pipelines than actually writing code. Spinnaker, which was originally developed by Netflix and open source, and apparently now developed jointly by Google and Netflix, is now available for GCP. This is with a couple of clicks, you can start creating pipelines for continuous delivery and continuous deployment with Spinnaker and GCP, making it very, very easy for you. You can use Stackdriver to monitor Spinnaker like you can do other services, and Spinnaker now supports GKE, Google Compute Engine, and Google App Engine, as well as connectivity to the Cloud Build and Container Registry vulnerability scanning solutions. The Chrome Ops developer experience team, Ola Carlson, SRE on that team, says getting a new Spinnaker instance up and running with Spinnaker for GCP was really simple. The solution takes care of the details of managing Spinnaker and still gives us the flexibility we need. We're now using it to manage our production and test Spinnaker installations.
Awesome. Yeah, Spinnaker plus GKE to me just sounds like the super easy path to almost PaaS, but custom.
To almost PaaS. Perfect.
Almost PaaS, yeah.
How much do you guys do Spinnaker at Foghorn these days?
We don't use a ton of Spinnaker. A lot of our customers are leveraging all their internal existing tools like Jenkins or Circle CI, Travis, other CI/CD tools. We don't see a ton of Spinnaker.
Would you recommend it over any of those tools?
I would have to get back to you on that. I'd have to ask engineers who know what they're talking about.
My experience with Spinnaker so far is that if you're, the company has people who really understand it and are really committed to it, you can do a lot of magic with it. But scaling it out beyond a few core engineers who really understand it and really can take advantage of it becomes very difficult. And, if you get stuck on an old version of Spinnaker, it's very hard to modernize your pipeline and really move forward. But, there are some core benefits of the Spinnaker for GCP, which do make it a little bit easier than normal Spinnaker. First, of course, it's a secure installation with one-click HTTPS configuration with Cloud Identity Aware Proxy, automatic backups, integrated auditing and monitoring, and, of course, simplified maintenance. So hopefully a lot of those challenges that companies suffer with Spinnaker are solved with GCP. Even this more managed service. But, overall, I'm not a huge fan of Spinnaker. I've replaced it in a couple places in the past, and will continue to recommend Terraform over it.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the Netflix tools have been really cool in that they were the leading edge in figuring out what additional tools we need to manage our cloud infrastructure. But they really were highly focused on their applications, on their organization. And I think you see that in the products where they're not generalized products.
Yeah, they're very biased and they're very opinionated, and they do things in the Spinnaker way, the Netflix way.
Yeah. Which they should.
one of the very early versions of Spinnaker, I remember, was very big on producing AMIs, and because Netflix does all AMI baking and then deploys AMIs as their autoscaling groups, which is one pattern. But if you wanted to do a partial bake and then you kind of do final configuration on launch, or you wanted to do build on run, it really didn't support that in a way that made sense to the Spinnaker model, and so there was some limitations on how you could use it. But it has come a long way, especially after they open sourced it and kind of got picked up by other people who were interested in maintaining it beyond Netflix, which is one of the other problems. A lot of the Netflix tools, they very often get released as open source and then just abandoned and not updated. And you talk to someone at Netflix, they're like, "Oh yeah, we moved off that tool 3 years ago." And we have something better internally, which we haven't open source.
Right.
Azure is making it easier to bring your Linux-based web apps to Azure App Services. Application development has radically changed over the years, from having to host physical hardware to moving to externally hosted systems, and now onto fully managed platforms and eventually serverless technology. Azure App Service is a great managed platform to easily bring source code or containers and deploy full web apps in minutes with the ease of configuration settings at the hands of the app owner. And you can use these things for like WordPress hosting or different types of open source tools. Azure is putting a lot of effort into Linux hosted offering to make it easier to try it out with a recent free tier for Linux web apps, which we talked about on the show previously. You can test solutions with no commitments, of course. Now they've released new promotional pricing for basic app services on Linux, which, depending on the data center, will lead to up to a 66% price drop once you get past that free tier. So overall, pretty nice.
Nice.
I wonder if they're going to support, mono applications or .NET applications, or whether they still want you to use Windows for those.
I think SQL Server on Linux is a thing now, so maybe they can let you do that. But I think they want you to do whatever you want to do, because all they care about is building market share.
Yeah. They like money.
Amazing when you're the most valuable company in the world, according to the stock market this last week when they crossed $1 trillion valuation again.
Oh, it's awesome. Hey, that's good though. Do what your customers
good for them,
want.
yeah.
Do what your
Well, I think they also are benefiting from the fact that no one's looking to investigate Microsoft in this antitrust
really
thing. So they are benefiting from everyone moving their money from Facebook and everyone else to Microsoft. We're like, that's the safe one, move it there.
Yeah, really.
So. If only they had a better OpenAI offering of some kind.
Oh, Microsoft's going to invest $1 billion for OpenAI, aimed at improving the Azure cloud platform, because you segued us right there. OpenAI is, of course, a young venture that aims to democratize the benefits of artificial intelligence and software-driven automation. Microsoft will be working with OpenAI in the coming years to enhance Microsoft's existing cloud computing and AI platform. And Microsoft's decision to invest in OpenAI and partner with a startup founded in 2015 comes as other tech giants navigating the AI and cloud landscapes make investments in deals of their own. So overall, this feels very much like our AI stuff is not as good as Google's or AWS's, and we need to catch up, and this is $1 billion that we can invest to get competitive advantage.
Awesome.
Microsoft's CEO says, by bringing together OpenAI's breakthrough technology with new Azure AI supercomputing technologies, our ambition is to democratize AI while always keeping AI safety front and center so everyone can benefit. So it's interesting to me that they didn't just buy them. It's the fact that it's an investment makes me think that they're a little bit worried about some of the political sides of AI and machine learning, and so they kind of get a little bit of distance from themselves, like, oh yeah, well, we're using a partner to provide that on top of Azure, but we're not running it ourselves, we don't own it yet, so maybe that's a bit of a competitive thing to kind of avoid some of the pressure that other cloud providers are getting about government privacy and all that kind of stuff.
For sure.
Or if this is just like, we're not sure this is really what our customers want yet, so we're going to put an investment into it and then we'll just buy you later.
Little chump change.
Yeah, $1 billion. I mean, it's in your pockets, right, Peter?
Yeah, for sure.
Keeping the AI safety front and center. It's an interesting thing to say.
It is, and that's the reason why I was wondering if this is very much we want this, but we don't want to be, we don't want to have that be associated with it if it goes rogue and kills everything.
Yeah.
That is awesome. All right.
Well, that's it for the new news. Peter, do you want to take us to the lightning round?
Let's do this. Azure is silo busting with new multi-protocol access for the Azure Data Lake.
I mean, the use of silo busting, such an interesting choice. Like, we're supposed to be excited that you support TCP and HTTPS protocols to an Azure Data Lake. Woo! Silos busted.
Azure Monitor for containers with Prometheus, now in preview.
Because, who doesn't want another monitoring tool for containers in their life? And so, Prometheus being apparently becoming the standard for Kubernetes, I guess this makes sense. But man, I'm tired of Stackdriver for containers, plus Prometheus for containers, and Stackdriver, then Azure Monitor for containers, and then Azure Monitor with Prometheus. Like, just make me a solution that works, people, and let's just move on.
I just need something to monitor the monitors now. I've got so many of them.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I saw a blog post like a couple weeks ago about monitoring Prometheus in production, and I was like, oh.
Please, no. Amazon ECR now supports increased repository and image limits.
1 million containers.
Ding. Awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, they had to increase the image limits to fit those 100 terabyte Windows images, so it makes sense.
There you go. AWS Cost Explorer now supports usage-based forecasts.
How do they do that? Like, how do they know my usage before I do it? So I'm glad they're forecasting, but I'm a little curious how that's actually going to work in reality.
I'm guessing they're getting away from the. I mean, they're trying to give people something, the actual users, to know how many things they're spinning up without having to worry about amortizing RIs and all that crap.
Maybe Corey Quinn can help us out.
Yeah, that's a good idea. We need him back. AWS Systems Manager Automation now makes it easier for discovering documents.
Maybe Amazon can use it to find some good help documentation.
Oh,
This is where that moment where you realize that your naming failed you, because Jonathan just called out that, looking for documents to solve your problem that Systems Manager is going to help you do. But when they're talking about documents here, they're talking about automation code that you've written up as snippets that you can basically pull into the system and do automation with. Mm-hmm. And it just shows you how naming matters, because no one reading this headline would have any idea what this is without that little bit of detail.
Oh, I thought we were going to find my Word documents. We're not?
No. I mean, why would System Manager Automation need your Word documents?
Who is going to find my Word documents?
Elasticsearch for... Open Distro for Elasticsearch.
There you go.
From Amazon.
AWS Device Farm improves device startup time to enable instant access to devices.
I mean, it won't matter because your mobile app will crash on launch anyway.
Oops. AWS Systems Manager Distributor makes it easier to create distributable software packages.
It does what it says on the label.
Yeah, I mean, Systems Manager Distributor makes distributions. Who would have thought?
Well named. That's what I have to say.
Well
about
named,
that one.
unlike discovering documents.
Yep.
That's true.
Well named. Amazon ECS console now enables simplified AWS App Mesh integration.
I look forward to working with our dev teams to now explain what App Mesh is.
Yeah.
And why they don't need it.
Amazon has released a new quick solution to create AI-driven social media dashboards.
I guess I should probably set that up then for the CloudPod to see how people think about us on social media. It's actually really cool though. If you ever built or bought a solution that does sentiment analysis, this solution actually will replace all of that for you, and you should definitely look at this quick start because it's pretty awesome. I will be playing with it myself.
Yeah, just as long as it's not something that's going to totally depress me when I see the results.
Well, I mean, that's a different question.
Amazon reportedly will hold a music festival during reInvent this year.
Oh, maybe the $1,500 admission price would be worth it now.
Yeah. No, that'll be an upcharge, Jonathan.
Oh, really?
Oh. You also have to get the ticket.
I mean, it's sort of funny to me because like the entire reInvent conference as a whole is sort of a music festival if you think about it. Between the live DJs, before the keynotes, Andy Jassy last year had live bands on stage, at each of his sections, if you remember, and then of course the big party, which is always a huge act. It seems interesting to me that this is going to be something new that apparently is trying to attract more media executives to reInvent. It's very interesting.
If Werner liked 70s rock, I'd be really excited about this.
Sorry, he does not like 70s rock.
I mean, Skrillex isn't your thing.
Not my thing, man. All right, last but not least at all, Google introduces the What If tool for cloud AI platform models.
So you can use your what if analysis if I didn't choose Google for my cloud.
And this is what would have happened if we recorded this podcast today.
What? Oh my god, Jonathan was ahead this entire time and I'm almost about to take it away from him just for that. But I'm not. I'm giving it to Jonathan.
It's the what if machine.
Yeah, you were on it.
Yes, I got you.
You were on it, Jonathan.
Well, that's a fantastic week, of course, here in the news. So let's sign off and we'll catch you guys next week.
Awesome. Good night.
Good night.
And that is the Week in Cloud. We'd like to thank our sponsor, Foghorn Consulting. Subscribe on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts and tweet us your feedback at #TheCloudPod or join our Slack channel, go to our website, thecloudpod.net for sign-up instructions.